So physicians, doctors, my good friends, how do you get your patients to like you? So there has been a lot of data and research and studies published on this. And if you were to summarize it, patients always talk about bedside manner when you're at the bedside, how you talk to them. It kind of all comes down to that. But there are a few specific things that you can do, and I'll go over them. So in a clinic setting, one of the things you can do is you need to look relaxed. You need to look open and inviting and relaxed. So one of the things I always do is just sit down. And I tell this to my medical students, my residents, my fellows, anyone I'm teaching or shadowing me or following me, have a seat, all right? You don't look like you're in a rush when you're seated. You're sitting down, as long as you don't have your arms crossed across your chest, which is like a closed off position if you've studied like human motion or like the study of movement. But if you sit down and look relaxed, even if you were in there for just all of 20 seconds, your patients feel like you gave them your entire attention and your entire time. And I'm not saying like any of these things as a trick. You're not trying to trick your patients into liking you. You should actually enjoy doing this. Like you went into medicine for a reason. You should love it. You should enjoy it. You should love going to work. And that's how it should be. Like, that's why we went into this. So sit down and be relaxed. This is not like a trick or anything. We're not playing mind games with our patients. We are really actually relaxed. Sit down, relax, and do a lot of open-ended questions. Now, if you're rushed and don't have a lot of time, you can kind of get to the point more. But that's one thing. Have a very relaxed, open, visibly open stance. And one way to do that is by sitting down. Imagine if your doctor is standing by the door with his hand on the handle, ready to turn the handle and ready to walk out. That's not very inviting, and that looks like you're rushed. You're just ready. You want 2 answers to 2 questions and you want to get out. Number 2, they talk about empathy and compassion. All the studies showed that if you're empathetic and compassionate and actually care, like really care, then you will be very, very liked by your patients. Like I remember one time I had a student with me. He was interviewing a patient and he was just trying to get through the questions. He wasn't even like really thinking. So he's asking the patient all these questions. The patient mentions, my son overdosed last weekend and died, and and he starts tearing up and he's about to cry, and he's only 50 years old and his son just died and overdosed on drugs. It's a horrific situation. The next words out of my student's mouth were, how many sexual partners have you had in the last 5 years? Like, wait, what? The guy just finished telling you that his son just died overdosing on drugs. You should have been listening and not thinking of just getting through your questions on your little survey sheet or whatever you're trying to get through. If you talk about people in business and you read a lot of business books, one thing that they say you should spend 80% of your time listening and only like 5 to 10, maybe 20% talking. So when you're asking a patient a question like, hey, tell me about this chest pain, what happened? And then be quiet. Let them talk for like a minute or two. And they may not have a whole 2 minutes worth to talk about, but spend most of your time listening. That's another very, very crucial tip. Another one would be, if you read Dale Carnegie's book on how to win friends and influence people, the number one thing, according to him, was people liked hearing their name. So if his name is John or Jane or Melissa or Keisha, whatever it might be, call the patient by their first name. There's nothing more dear to a person than their first name. So when you walk in, they're like, hey, Mrs. Jones, or hey, Gloria, or whatever it might be. But they feel that instant connection. They're not just a number. A lot of healthcare now has become like a numbers game. You got to see 40, 50 patients in an hour, or whatever it might be. It's become like a numbers game. You don't know people's names anymore. It's super impersonal. You're in, you're out, you're ordering tests and lab work, and that's it. You're just looking at numbers and saying goodbye. Here's what we got to do with you. So be as personal as possible. The next one that I found that's super helpful is talk to your patients about things that they care about. If your patient has a shirt on and there's a tractor on the shirt, like, hey, you guys see a tractor on your shirt. Do you own a farm? Like, do you have a tractor? Like, what's the deal with that? And then just talking about it. Same thing with like a fishing hook or a golf shirt or a golf hat. Or they got a cool looking, shirt that looks like a race car or something. Just talk to your patients about something else. Almost all patients, well, actually all patients are real humans that have other hobbies outside of being hypertensive or diabetic. They're not just the 48-year-old with severe hypertension or the 28-year-old female with cholesterol. They actually are humans that have real problems and real concerns, and they have kids. Like, if a woman walks in and says, sorry, I missed my last appointment, I have 3 kids. Like, hey, I have 4 kids, tell me about them. How old are they? What do they do? Do they play any sports? Do they, just talk to your patients like you'd be talking to a friend. And that's another one. Talk to patients in words they understand. You're not sure. A patient, you don't want to say. Sometimes I've found that doctors just want to sound smart. Like, well, your CHED's VASC2 score and your ASCVD risk factor 7.2%, and if we calculate this out and do this test via the radial artery, like, okay, just stop. Explain to the patient in human terms, like, what does this mean for me? Now, sure, if your patient is a doctor or a medical person, you can up the level, but I still talk to even my physician patients like I talk to my normal patients, because a urologist isn't going to know necessarily what a cardiac cath is or what atrial fibrillation is or, whatever. Just like I don't know what urology stuff is. Sure, I have a big picture and a big idea because I went to medical school, but I don't know, all these fancy words that they use. So definitely talk to your patients in verbiage and understand, and language that they understand, and talk to them about things they care about. So, like, how do you remember that Mr. So-and-so likes to golf? Well, tie it into your note somehow. Like, if you're a family practice doctor or a cardiologist, you could say, Mr. Jones has excellent functional capacity, no chest pain, no shortness of breath. He plays 18 rounds of golf almost every day or twice a week and has no symptoms. Like, that reminds you that he plays golf. Or, I don't know what other fields you might be in, but Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so enjoys bingo and knitting, and just kind of tie it into something so that it's in your note. It's not really like an assessment and plan, but it kind of contributes to your overall thing about it. Or you could put it in your HPI. Miss Jones is here today after playing bingo. She said she did really well, but she did start having some squeezing chest pain that was going up into her neck. Like, whatever it might be, somehow you can incorporate it into your note, or just put it under like social history. Patient enjoys golf, patient enjoys fishing, swimming, whatever, just something to remind you this is the guy that, owns a boat, or, golfs, or this is the young lady that won the Olympic gold, and, whatever it might be. So find some personal thing to connect with your patients about, not superficially because you just want to pretend to know them, but because you actually do care. Like, I would be so fascinated if my patient won an Olympic gold in something. Just like I'm fascinated about the guy that caught a smallmouth bass or played the PRS guitar. Literally, I had an hour conversation about it with a patient yesterday, maybe the day before, about PRS, Paul Reed Smith guitars, and he owns multiple guitars, and he saves up for them and buys them and plays them, and he's like this fascinating musician that I would have never known about had I not seen, and I forgot what he mentioned. He mentioned something, and I said, hey, do you play electric guitars? And he's like, yeah. I was like, oh, I have one. He's like, well, what do you have? And then I explained to him. He's like, oh my God, I have all PRS guitars. Like, whatever it might be, make sure you connect with your patients on something. The next tip that I will definitely say is you have to be super professional. You cannot be like, hey, Jones, and you got to be professional. Sure, you could be personal and talk about your family and their family and all these topics they care about, but you got to be professional still. You cannot walk in talking slang or having no decorum. You have to be professional so that when patients go home, they feel like they talk to a professional. Another tip that I would recommend is, and I do this all the time, and my students, it drives them crazy. I ask them literally probably 5 times, do you have any more questions? I look at the patient do you have any more questions? Do you have any questions about this? Any other questions? And then I look at the person that came in with them, hey, do you have any questions? Any questions on what we talked about? Any questions about the medication? You need to, first of all, involve everyone in the room if there's multiple people there. But second of all, at least 5 times towards the end of my conversation, I ask them if they have any more questions. Without a doubt, that always helps. The other one is obviously smile. One of the biggest things is smiling. You have to be a smiler and have a positive attitude. You should always be positive. If a patient comes up to you and says, oh my goodness, I can never quit smoking. I've tried so much. I just love it. I can't. It's so hard. I'm like, oh man, I know it's so hard. Just forget about it. You don't have to quit. No. Sure, if they just tell you don't talk to me about this anymore, then fine. But as a physician and as a leader, you should view yourself as a leader. You should always be leading and being positive and having a positive outlook and trying to lead this person. Another thing that I always talk about is and when it comes to empathy, kind of like what we talked about earlier, is put yourself in that person's shoes. This person's never had a cardiac cath before, or has never had a mole removed, or has never had a slit lamp of their eye. Like, whatever it is, they've never had one of these things. Put yourself in their shoes. What would they be thinking of? How intimidated or scared would be? Like, sure, I do 1 million cardiac caths a year, and to me it's like nothing. Oh yeah, we're sending you for a cardiac cath, no big deal. They are freaking out. You're gonna stick some wires and cameras through my leg or through my wrist and go to my heart, and like they view this as like this major life-changing event. So have some empathy, put yourself in their shoes, and imagine like what they're going through, what they're thinking. That's why I always ask them, have you ever had a cardiac cath before? No. Well, but my dad did, and I was with him. Okay, well, that gives me some background. Okay, he's never had one. He kind of knows the process because his father had one, and they went together. So definitely do that. Also, another one, respect your patient's wishes. If Mr. Simon says that I don't ever want to talk about smoking cessation with you again, then don't talk about smoking cessation with them ever again. Now, as a physician, it is still my duty to bring it up at least once a year. So I might not bring it up every time, but I'll say, look, I know you told me you don't want to talk about this, so I acknowledge that I know that they don't want to talk about this, but also they know that I need to talk about this because this is my job. I want them to be healthy, and I care about their health, even if they don't care about it as much as I do. So definitely you can always open it up like, listen, I know you said you don't want to talk about this, but the weight loss and the smoking and all that, you got to get back on track with this. So those are some tips. I hope you enjoyed them. Share this with other physicians or other healthcare practitioners that you know probably need to hear this. And listen, put some tips down below. There's a comment section. What has worked for you? What are some things that you've done as a healthcare person or practitioner that have helped you connect with your patients, and they've told you that they really enjoy and they really like about you, or that they've mentioned they didn't like about someone else? Put those in the comments below, and I'll be answering those, and hopefully we'll talk about it on one of these next YouTube lives that we do.